Everyone knew who was in control of the club, and that the club wasn't satisfied at all with the on-field performance.
Now, have I got initiative here? Or do I have to get there at 37 and try and show you how? You've got a leader, Barry. You can't be getting the message through. Dowd's your experience. Robbie, you've got enough experience to get these guys on the move, running past, making hand pass targets. I want it done. If we're going to fail, we'll fail my way. And my way at the moment is handball. So get out there and attempt to do as I ask. If that fails, then you can blame me. But at the moment, I am blaming you. All right, now, come on.
But he just took that in his stride, and I mean, he's just a fantastic person, as we all know.
When a coach, is probably confused or at a loss for what to do next, he needs a very strong president who is able to read the situation and step in and take hold of the reins and say, look, this is the way it's got to go. And Mick Aylett, he could do that.
He was a great football man. I mean, if you sort of wanted to identify, the one person that had the courage to say that football had to spread nationally and had to make the sacrifices and make all the Victorian clubs shudder, it was Aylett. And it probably cost him the presidency because he went too hard and too fast for his own good. But, I mean, we've got a national competition today that thrives, and victory has 1,000 fathers and defeats an orphan, and nothing could be truer than that with Alan Aylett.
And then we started to come good, and then we became fairly invincible. There was a manic belief in our own abilities.
What were your feelings after losing the first 4 games of the season?
Well, at that stage you sort of don't look as far ahead as this. You just sort of look ahead to the next game. And
did you write North off then, though?
Oh no, I was a bit worried after about the 7th game. We had to start winning then. The time was running out if we're going to make the 5, and we did. Well, when I say we did start winning. And once we were on our way, well, again, it was the same thing, the Mets next week. And but once we got towards the end, we knew we could make it. And once we got in there, we knew we'd have a big chance.
There was a big kerfuffle over whether Ron thought that Wadey was getting near the end of it and didn't know whether he'd prove of value in the finals, whether or not to play him. And actually, one night we dropped him.
Wadey was probably getting towards the end of his career. He's the only player that I can remember that after learning that he'd been dropped from the grand final team in 1975, 10 minutes later there was a knock at the door, and that's Wadey. And Wadey presented a case, an impelling case, and we changed our mind.
It was really touch and go whether he would play in that grand final side that won the first premiership. And on the Thursday night, he wasn't in the team.
If we'd lost and he had played poorly and not kicked a goal, let's say, we would have been feeling really bad. But he played well. He kicked 3 or 4. Could have had more.
And Barassi decided himself. It wasn't pressure from anyone else. He just made a decision where all the way along the line he thought that Wadey wasn't going to be in it. He changed his mind and put him in.
I didn't play in the preliminary final. I was injured. They said I was injured. That's what they said. I think they dropped me. I was a little bit sore. But in that final, Richard McKelchek did his knee. And so there was a position available. And there was a lot of debate whether they'd play me or not play me and so on. And when I left training that night, I still didn't know that whether I was playing or not. And at about 9 o'clock at night, there was a knock on the door. It was Barassi with a chess set. He said, "Do you play chess?" I said, "No, I don't play chess." He said, "Just come out to tell you you're in the side, and we want you to play." And he went through he said, "The one thing I don't want you to do on the day is I don't want you to go for a mark ever during the match. Just want you to stay down. We've got a plan worked out." that they'll be looking for you to go for marks. You just stay down. And it absolutely worked a treat. I kicked 4 goals, should have had another 3. And all the balls came over the back and I got them. Well, in 75, I was actually picked to play in the grand final, and in those days we didn't have interchange, and in hindsight, and it sounds stupid now, I tried to get myself in the 18 and not be on the bench. It was a bit like there was a bit of a stigma. But and I'd been out, I'd missed the finals with a hamstring. I tore it before the first final, and I'd been playing up until then. And when we won the preliminary final, and I got the nod, and Brass said, "You're playing next week, make sure you look after yourself during the week." And then I think on the Thursday I'd had a chat with Max Ritchie, who was chairman of selectors at the time, trying to say, look, it'd be better if I started on the ground so I was warm all the time and not coming on cold with a hamstring. And so instead of selection taking sort of 5 minutes on Thursday night, it took about 2 hours. And when Max came out, he walked directly towards me, so I knew what had happened. And so I think I gave him a whack in the chest and went home. And the rest is history. And I didn't play. Gary Cowden got that position then, and which was a pity. For me, it was great for Gary, but that was our first flag, obviously, for the club.
Williamson, welcome you to the grand final of 1975, North Melbourne versus Hawthorn. Davis of North won the toss, and they're kicking to the western end of the MCG. The umpire is...
There was great rivalry between Hawthorn and North, because the North were doing so well, and Hawthorn had a great side. We won, we won a lot of matches, and but we were beaten by the superior coaching of Ron and the team, and the magnetism or the oomph that comes from it being a first premiership for a club.
I think you've got to excuse both sides. They're both a little impatient because of the strain. Kekovich in front, couldn't hold that mark. Punched away by the defenders. Rowland goes for a hand pass. Back to Calvin Matthews, he's grabbed. And they're tackling pretty hard at the moment. Jaworski gets it back. Going after it now. There we see Henry, a little slow to get rid of it. Tucks in there, battling hard with Cable. Oh!
A fair bit of the first quarter, because I think John Burns was playing in the centre and he kicked 4 goals in the first quarter or first half, which goes a pretty good start. And then once we got to 3/4 time and we were in front of the 3/4 time, I remember at the avalanche in the last quarter. I don't think anybody, the crowd was on our side because we hadn't been premiers ever. So there might have been 100,000 people there, and there's probably 90,000 preparing for North Melbourne, and the other 10,000 got drowned out. And once we kicked the first goal in the last quarter, there was sort of nothing. We knew then there was nothing that was going to stop us from being premiers. So it was a good feeling, really.
It's North Melbourne through Chisnell, getting that ball to the half-forward flank on the northern side of the ground. Trotters after it. There's the siren! North Melbourne's first ever flag, and the final scoreboard now reads, at the MCG in the 1975 grand final, the final scoreboard reads North Melbourne 19-8, 122, Hawthorn 9-13-67.
No one was going to beat us that year in the grand final. Just the atmosphere and that down the club was sensational.
I'd been involved at Yarrawonga in their first ever premiership, and I knew what a great thing it was, but also for North Melbourne people that were starved of success. To get your first ever, I think, is always the greatest premiership.
There was a group of people that met I think then on a Friday night. They subsequently got it to be a Saturday morning, and they were big betters, these people, and more so on racing, but also football. I could name a lot of people, but I won't. And after the first 4 losses, someone piped up and said, well, what price why this happened I don't know, but what price North Melbourne for the premiership? So it was there was a certain person of the group that offered 80 to 1, on the proviso that they had to have bet $1,000, minimum of $1,000. So it was 80,000 to 1,000. They couldn't have 800 to 10, which I might have been inclined to have because maybe I could afford the $10. And anyway, the same fellow laid it three times, $80,000 to 1,000 to win the premiership. I think 2 of the 3 had now passed away, but the fellow that took the bet, he's also passed away. Not that long after the grand final, he paid the money out of the same briefcase. And the money was up front, so it was $243,000 $1,000 that was paid out. A lot of money in 1970 at the conclusion of the 1975 season.
You don't have to be real smart to work out they met a better side on the day. Gentlemen. They will stand by now. Sir Morris Nathan, President.
You're so engrossed in what's happening, doesn't it? But I mean, winning a grand final in 75 was probably the best thing that the supporters have ever seen. It really was unbelievable to see the members at the ground after the game. Things you'll remember.
Come on, Barry. Let's go, Barry. Let's go.
Get a few words with.
Who's this?
Channel 2.
Channel 2.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, well, it's my station.
You seem very fast compared with 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so we didn't play well that day. The ground didn't suit us. We're not a big side, so we need sort of firm conditions, really.
Was the ground the difference, do you think, or not?
I don't think the Hawthorn having one game in a month would have helped them, but sort of we built up and we got a lot of confidence from last week.
Especially in that last quarter, you took a lot of big marks.
Well, these things happen in the last quarter and blokes are a bit tired. Marking power comes out then a bit. That be enough? That's right.
Particularly in those days, football clubs were district clubs, and the whole district, they were, if the team was up, the whole district was well. If the team was down, the district was sick, and it was just a wonderful thing for them to win their first premiership years.
Being the first one ever, and over a 50-year period, I mean, it really did include a lot of people in their 70s and 80s and were down at the ground on the night that we won their first premiership, and the scene was absolutely unbelievable. Never be seen again. And, it was just great for all of us to have been involved since we were all young kids ourselves, and to see it all come to fruition, and to see the joy and the excitement and the smiles on the people's faces. It was just one of those scenes that you never forget.
I suppose after the game, the most endearing memory I have is something I'll never forget, and even talking about now sort of sends tingles up your spine, is going back to the ground that night and being introduced to the crowd and to see the thousands of people there at a barrack for North Melbourne, a lot of them for 50 years, and never to see any success, to see them sort of openly crying was something that none of the players I think will ever forget. We all talk about it when we catch up with each now. We'll talk about that night back on the back of the semi-trailer.
Yeah, it was terrific. It was something that we'd all aspired for. Even though when you first go to a football club you want to have success, but you don't think it's going to come readily available as it did. But of course you put a lot of hard work into it, and the disappointment of 74 I think was a spur for us as well.
The elderly people who'd followed North for 50 or 60, 70 years, to see them crying, they were so happy that they'd finally won a flag, it was absolutely sensational.
Only been into one grand final the whole time that they've been in the league. No, it was a good night. We went to the Southern Cross first and then went back to Arden Street after that.
Just people everywhere. It was just incredible. I mean, by the way, I've never seen a bad premiership, by the way. Even Gidgee upper thirds. Every premiership's been pretty good, but it was... and I think, I don't remember if Brass or Schimmer said it first, or someone, or Barry Davis, the captain, might just said it was just to see the people, they're just crying. People were just weeping.
Club that was totally bereft of success for 50 years. And all of a sudden you saw elderly people from Kensington, hard-working, salt-of-the-earth people with tears in their eyes, crying. You thought we discovered water in this day and age. There must have been an oil spring underneath Arden Street. But people were just ecstatic. And, they were just so precious, those moments.
75 was pretty good. They can never take that away from us.
The reason why it's one of my favourite sort of memories that these people, they were just so thankful, glad, happy, delirious. It's just... I had people coming up to me at the do up at the Southern Cross, which is now gone. Oh, Ron, thank you very much. I can die happy now. One of the things that the coach down at North Melbourne was very strong on was I don't think there's any worse than someone being late for the team bus. And so buses left on time. And if there wasn't all the people there, bad luck. I had the cup at this time, and we took a bit of time getting out because there were autographs and talks. And anyway, when we get outside, the bus is gone. Okay, well, I can't bitch about that because anyway, so it didn't matter because there's taxis there, so we grabbed a taxi and we get a puncher. This had happened just outside a little pub, it's not there now, and we said to the guys, mate, we're not going to help you, keep the meter running, we'll go into that little pub there, come in and get us when you're ready. So we go to this little pub, it's got the bar, 4 people drinking, and a barman, and they're all watching a replay of the grand final. So they all naturally look around when someone else comes into their space, you know. And it's the coach, the winning coach, with the cup. Anyway, we had a funny 10 minutes in there, and we eventually get down to the night, and it was just marvellous to feel all the gratitude, and everyone's so deliriously happy, you know. It was just fantastic.
First of all, congratulations to you, Ron. And is there anything left in your football career for you to do?
Win a Brownlow medal.
Too late, Ron. Yeah, I knew that answer, but, you know, apart from that.
I just enjoy being in football, and until I get sick of it, or get sick of me, one of the two, which can be the case with the coach, I'll keep going.
John, was it your biggest disappointment yesterday?
Yes, I think it was, Bob. I think it was. Until a couple of weeks ago, I hadn't ever seen the replay of that 1975 grand final, but I did have a look at it, and I have to dip my lid to Ron because whereas the Hawthorn guys played the way I was looking for them to play, banging the ball down the ground at all costs and fighting the contest down there, Ron's players, the North Melbourne side, delivered the ball much better to their teammates, and I'd have to say this was a direct result of the coaching styles, and that way was superior. In fact, I learned more from that about a month ago than I did at the time, you know.
Did you get upset at the number of 15-yard penalties that were handed out against your team yesterday?
No, I thought they were all justified.
Did you send out to your players and try to curb them doing that?
Yes, on the back line.
Another hour and a half later, we microphone, the bus is waiting outside, guys. It's going to leave in 5 minutes to go back for you to pick up with your wives and your girlfriends. So I missed the thing again. So they were probably looking a bit grumpy, and this big policeman comes up. He said, Ron, he said, what's the matter, son? You just won the club's first premiership. What? You look as though you lost your last dollar. I said, we missed the bus, and how are we going to get back to the Southern Cross? He said, perhaps I can help you. Follow me. So he swivels round and goes through the crowd. The crowd just part like Moses parting the waters, and we follow on behind, and we go about 60 metres out into the car park. He stops, looks over his left shoulder, and I look over his right, and there it is, the divvy van. He knocks on the back door, opens it up, and there's a bloke inside. The bloke's looking at him, and the copper said, mate, this is your lucky night, piss off. And his face just went beam, happiest beam I've ever seen. Fantastic. Out he goes, and then we go, and we get up there. It's fantastic.
Last year was harsh and hard and to the point, and I still believe it was true, and I won't take any of it back. But tonight is a different story, and I believe we have learned from last year, and it was a significant reason in our win today.
The thing that you learn is that, you win the premiership on the last Saturday in September, and unless you're in Perth on the next day in Sunday recruiting, somebody else is going to sign the next bloke. So, there's no week of celebration or whatever. You're just hard at it again the next day. And I suppose it's when you're not hard at it the next day that's when you start to lose your way. And, that's what I found. I found that there was never any great satisfaction or relief, you just get on with it the next day, because you'd be frightened somebody else might sign the bloke that you were chasing.
Wade, Davis, these fellows, what do you think about them? Do you think you can force them into another year?
Well, you can't force people to do anything. Doug would be looking seriously at his future because of injury and age, whereas the others have only got to look at the age problem. But we'd like to have them all back again for sure. They've been enormous to that club. They've shown great example to players who otherwise mightn't have been quite as dedicated. Just their attitude, and Cabe's another one of the older brigade. Their professionalism and their pride in their performance and the way they look after themselves and work at their game on the track, they're really great to have around.
Up until the early 70s, I mean, while we classed football as being a professional sport, it was nowhere near a professional sport, and it certainly isn't when you compare it today. But so with taking all of that into account, it was just an exciting time, and if ever there was a time to win a premiership, it was just in that era where the beginning of professionalism started.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you.
Just one little point.
Certainly.
Very quick. Coach, quiet, Lou. It's our day, not yours. You were Personality of the Year yesterday.
Yeah.
As coach, you get a lot of credit, and I suppose in a way that's fair because he also gets the axe at times too. But I'd just like to let people know that a lot of people have helped me at North, and I don't just mean the players, but the other people at North, the selectors, Mick Aylett, with suggestions, and it's been a pretty open sort of discussion area for football at North because there's such a lot of brains there. Billy Stevens, Ray Jordan, they all come up with ideas at times which are really good, and it's very, very helpful, particularly to a guy like myself who hasn't got the time that I'd like to spend, and I'd like to make that known.
There was no greater admission of the quickening pace of the game than at the beginning of the 1976 season, when the league introduced the two umpire system.
We're going to play the match against Richmond now.
The
team that we love playing, and who loves playing us?
Prepared for the chaos it was to cause.
In 1974, they completely wiped the floor with us in 4 matches. Today, come on. Last year, we returned the compliment beautifully. So 76 between the two clubs could be a crossroads situation. Yes. Which is going to be the club that dominates the other? I believe it's going to be us. I believe because I'm in my 4th year with you, and I just could not believe that you haven't taken some notice. I believe you know and you feel the way football's got to be played in the modern 70s.
He was once described by a football critic as a man who, every time he looks in the mirror, he takes a bow, and has a head so big he can't get an aspirin to fit it. Whether you agree with that description or not, Ronald Dale Barassi is a force to be reckoned with in the world of VFL football. That Barassi is a far cry from the man who now lies in Geelong Hospital, recovering from injuries received in a car crash that nearly ended his coaching career.
He was going with Neil Roberts to Geelong, I think, and had the car accident, and we got the news that he was pretty crook, and so was Coconut. And then we actually had to play in Adelaide, a night game. And Barassi obviously wasn't there, so I had to take training that night. And we were just like a ship without a rudder. We, what's going to happen without Barassi, and that sort of thing happened. And we got pumped over in Adelaide.
Well, what about your chances this Saturday? If you're going to be at the game, as you say, you won't be able to jump up and down, but you'll be there trying to give some kind of moral support, no doubt.
Well, I'm a bit at a loss to say how we'll go. We'll have a very good chance. It's at home. And we had a loss on Tuesday.
Which is quite a devastating one, wasn't it?
That's right. And but I always like to feel how the guys are thinking about the game, and I can't do that being away from them, so I'm not as confident that I'm right as usual. But given those two things, the fact we got beaten and we play them later on in the year, or in the finals, it's going to be a tough game. They won't win it easily if they do win it at all.
It was a bad accident, and there were some severe injuries. Neil Roberts in particular, and Barassi. But then, he was there the following week in crutches and on a bloody cart.
And then it took us a little while to get over come to realise that he's going to be okay, and then he's on the crutches and he's throwing the crutches and all that sort of stuff. So it didn't take him long to get back to his normal self.
Brent. All right, fellas, now listen. We said we'd have a bloody fight in our hands. What do you have?
We probably didn't think we had as good a team in 76 as we did in 75, but we managed to get there again because we just got used to winning. And indeed in the preliminary final in 76 I actually cracked my ankle. So unlike the year before when I didn't care what it was, I was going to play. And so I had it cracked right through my ankle, which I did play.
76, Keith Gregg leads North Melbourne onto the ground for the 1976 Grand Final. Now, Jeff and David, we saw the moves that Ron Barassi made last week. There were millions of them. There were 10, in fact, out of the 18 positions on the ground. What can we expect
Richmond
today?
was probably the best side in 74. In 75, I think Hawthorn over the whole year were better than we were. We managed to win because we had that thing of this is our first premiership, nothing's going to stop us. 76, we started poorly. I think we lost the first 4 games of the season, which could have been a hangover, as you perhaps called it. But then we got going and we made the grand final again, and we were probably the best side on the year that year.
Here it is, the start of the 1976 VFL Grand Final. The opening bounce will favour Keenan. Gets the first tap out. Chance for Keith Gregg, taken away by Kelvin Matthews, who goes down to a solid hip and shoulder from Terry Moore, who is at centre half forward for North Melbourne.
Probably the only reason we really lost was because of Peter Crimmins. He was about to die, and he was a Hawthorn stalwart. He's their captain. He obviously had a bad run with his cancer. And the Hawthorn players, like we did the year before to win our first, Hawthorn players were really hell-bent on winning the grand final so they could take the cup into Peter Crimmins Hospital. And that's really the way it went. I don't think anything was going to stop them on that day. So we won one year that we shouldn't have won perhaps, and they won one the next year that they probably shouldn't have won, so it was sort of evened out.
I think that's a spur that Hawthorn had. And I can always remember the photo of, I think it was about 3 or 4 Hawthorn guys in the hospital with Peter with the cup. It's just, not that you want to lose grand finals, but I just thought it was a terrific photo, and the esteem that they held Peter Crimmins in was fantastic.
76 was going to be very difficult for us to beat them in that grand final.
From point blank range. Didn't miss. A roar. Players run back to the centre, and if anything, I must say that Hawthorn have picked up their confidence quicker than North Melbourne.
They beat us 5 times that year. In the night grand final, they beat us twice during the year, and they beat us twice in finals.
And we had a chance to win. It was only Peter Knights that stopped us. He played a fantastic game. Yeah.
Scott and Keenan again behind the play. Oh, and did you like? Oh, and another one. Oh, Peter Keenan, if you don't mind, please. Well. And was that seen by the umpire? It was for a free kick, but no report. Oh, Peter Keenan.
It was Hawthorn and North Melbourne in those days. We're the two, probably the best teams, best clubs, perhaps. Their effort was just fantastic. So they were a very, very strong club, and they had a bit to sort of prove, and they proved they were a bit better than us on the day.
The 75 Premiership, I suppose, will live forever in North's mind. And I remember, I think in 76, Ron was quoted in the paper as saying that he thought Hawthorn had a vendetta against North Melbourne because of the Premiership the previous year.
I think we appreciated and respected each other's talents and team. Hawthorn, as you said, had some great players, and Lee Matthews and Don Scott, who was a big, tough competitor. Peter Knights, of course. There's a lot of them, really. The other Matthews, too many to mention. Calvin Moore at fullback. I mean, there was a lot. Dermot Burden a bit later on, and Dipper. All those blokes they were a great side, as we were. So when you've got 2 great sides playing all the time, depending on which one sort of comes better prepared to play is the one that usually wins the game. And I suppose over those 5 or 6 years, if you add them up, we probably won half of them, and they probably won half of them. So they were certainly great contests, and we earned each other's respect.
The handball away, and North Melbourne doesn't complete. Chalman's gone. The Hawks have had revenge on last year. They've won the 76 grand final.
The final scores as they're related. Barassi and Kennedy embrace each other. Two great sports. The final scores. Hawthorn have won.